Welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Sarah Thompson. Hi, welcome to Big Homeopathy. I'm your host, Big Homeopath, Sarah Thompson. So this town that I live in, it's a small town. Only has about 1,000 permanent residents. And in the last town that I lived in, I really didn't make any connections at all. And when we moved away from there, we kind of just ghosted. And I don't have any ties. And when I moved here, I felt determined to participate and to maybe be a part of a community and to build a community for myself. And when I first got here, I immediately got really sick and I had small children. And so I had to reach out to people who were essentially strangers for help. And I did. And slowly I started to build something of a network. And even eventually kind of started to feel like I had some connections and some sense of belonging. And I would get invitations and accept them when I could and reciprocate, and some people would come. But after over 9 years, I never really caught on. I never really got close inside a community here. But there were a couple people that I felt that I was friends with and in an inner circle with at least around certain people. And when one of those people moved away, there was a going away party. And some of her friends, I wasn't involved in organizing it, but I was invited to it. And I was excited to go. And I went. And the hosts made a presentation of an enormous, beautiful quilt that this small inner circle had spent all winter crafting as a gift for this woman and an expression of love and of her membership in the community. And I had had no idea. No one had told me. No one had invited me. I don't know whether I was excluded on purpose or unintentionally, but it didn't matter. I was devastated. I had to step outside. I couldn't even talk to people for a while because in that moment, I was 13. And that 13-year-old girl who used to get through the weekend thinking things were okay and then show up in school on Monday morning and find out that everyone else had been at Matt's house on Friday night, or who would wait after the dance for her mom to pick her up and watch everyone else pile into Kim's car for movie night while she went home to spend another night with her parents. She was there, and it was blown wide open for me that I was creating a dynamic for myself that if I couldn't face it, I was going to live in forever. I have, I think, attached a lot of my identity as a kid to this bully story that I experienced. And I would never tell you that I considered myself to be a victim. The big takes responsibility for her emotions and she doesn't blame it on other people. I would tell you that. But I was attached to this story that other people had hurt me, that I was an outcast and an outsider and ostracized. And there's safety in that, actually, in choosing to stay outside, in choosing to be in exile, because nobody can get in. Nobody can hurt you. You can just kind of be a little superior. It's lonely at the top, right? But that's not a true place to be. Arrogance and victimhood have a polarity that is easy. I've easily recognized it in other people, but I couldn't have told you that it existed in me until I looked at this moment and I realized that when I was a teenager, choosing that perception of shame and rejection that I was believing and submitting to because I wanted those people's approval more than I cared about being who I was, which is not surprising at 13, but at 42, if there's a piece of you that's still carrying that, then that little girl is just sitting in a corner of the coffee house of your soul, poking pins in the effigies of your efforts to make community. And that's what was happening to me. And I realized that I was choosing to stay outside. It's not up to anybody else to love me. I'm not in charge of how other people feel about me, but it is up to me to love other people. And if I want to connect, I have to mean it. I have to see that those relationships are worth having and put myself out there for them and take the risk of getting hurt and get rejected, because otherwise it's not real and I'm not really there. And what's the point? So that was a painful lesson for me. And I've spent a lot of time thinking about it because I am building a community for myself, not yet in this town, but in other places, because I am choosing to reveal who I am more and more. And maybe that means that I don't get to be special. And I'm not sure what that means. And, I'm just back from this spectacular trip to the Outer Banks in North Carolina. I just spent this full week totally sinking into the experience of being with my husband's family. And I had a professor in college who actually was an art history professor who disowned me when I pursued finance for a while, which is another story. But he taught me about holiness in art. I studied Northern Renaissance art, which has a lot of Christian symbolism, and he talked about how the word vacation is new in our language, and that people would talk about going on holidays. And even if you read older books, you'll see kids talk about going on summer holiday, and now they talk about summer vacation. And there's nothing in my life that I want to vacate. My life is amazing, and even when it's not, I'm in it. But I will celebrate a holy day. I will elevate a moment of lying on a beach with people who love me while my children just shriek with joy and pleasure for hours playing in the ocean, or lie on a dock with old friends and speak a language that's almost unintelligible to the uninitiated until my cup is completely full. But I can't do that if I'm not really there and not really present. And so if I want to honor the holy, I need to surrender to the real. And I'm choosing to do that. And it turns out that it's not that easy, but I think it's awfully rewarding. And that's the transformation of Big Homeopathy this week. And I think it's going to be huge. I'll see you next week.